They had marched for days through burned villages and empty roads. The Ottoman army had seen war before. They had seen mass graves. They had seen cities erased. But nothing prepared them for what waited beyond the forest. As the morning fog lifted, the soldiers stopped. In front of them stood thousands of wooden stakes, driven deep into the earth, and on each stake, a human body. Some were already dead, others were still alive. Men impaled through the stomach, the chest, the spine, positioned carefully so death would come slowly. Birds circled overhead. The ground was black with blood. An estimated 20,000 corpses formed a wall of terror stretching to the horizon. The Ottoman commander turned pale. Even Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, is said to have whispered, "I cannot take a country whose ruler can do this." This wasn't a demon. This wasn't a monster from legend. This was a man. And history remembers him as Vlad the Impaler. Welcome to Real History Documentary, where we strip away myth, fear, and fiction and confront history exactly as it was. Brutal, complex, and human. Today we're telling the story of a prince who became synonymous with terror. A man whose name inspired the most famous vampire in literature. But the truth is far more disturbing than any fictional monster. Because Vlad Dracula wasn't born evil. He was forged by circumstances that would break most people, and the methods he used, horrifying as they were, had a purpose that historians still debate today. If you want true stories that feel cinematic but remain factual, subscribe now. Because stories like this are disappearing under legend. Hit that notification bell because you won't want to miss what comes next. Now let's go back to where it all began. The year is 1431. A child is born in the fortress town of Sighisoara, in the region we now call Romania. His father is Vlad II, a military commander, a member of the Order of the Dragon, a Christian knightly order dedicated to defending Europe against the Ottoman Empire. Because of this membership, his father carries a title, Dracul. In Romanian, it means the dragon, but it also means something else, the devil. And so the son is known as Dracula, son of the dragon, son of the devil. He grows up in a world that is falling apart. Wallachia, the principality his father rules, sits at the edge of two colliding civilizations. To the south, the Ottoman Empire is expanding, swallowing kingdom after kingdom. To the north and west, Christian Europe is divided, weak, and desperate. Wallachia is caught between them, and survival requires impossible compromises. Young Vlad watches his father make alliance after alliance, breaking them when necessary. He sees betrayal as a political tool. He learns that loyalty is a luxury that gets you killed. But his real education begins in 1442. When Vlad is 11 years old, his father does something that will haunt the boy forever. To secure peace with the Ottoman Sultan Murad II, Vlad Dracul offers a gesture of loyalty. He hands over his two youngest sons as hostages. Vlad and his younger brother Radu are taken from their home. They are transported hundreds of miles south, deep into Ottoman territory. They are prisoners, but the word used is guess. They are held in Anatolia. They are educated. They are trained. But they are not free. And every day, they know one thing. If their father betrays the Sultan, they will die. Imagine being 11 years old, torn from your family, placed in the hands of an empire that has conquered half the known world. Knowing that your life is a bargaining chip. This is where Vlad the Impaler is born. The Ottomans do not torture him, not physically, but the psychological pressure is constant. He watches executions. He sees how the Ottomans maintain order through calculated violence. He witnesses impalement, the empire's preferred method of execution for traitors and rebels. The Ottomans don't just kill, they make examples. They create displays of suffering so horrific that others are too terrified to resist. Young Vlad watches. He learns. He internalizes a brutal lesson. Fear is the most powerful weapon in the world. His brother Radu adapts differently. Radu is charming, diplomatic, He converts to Islam. He becomes a favorite of the Sultan's court. He thrives. But Vlad refuses to bend. He remains Christian. He remains proud. He remains angry. And in that anger, something hardens. Years pass. His father continues to play his dangerous political game back in Wallachia. He switches sides. He betrays alliances. He does whatever it takes to keep his throne. But in 1447, the game ends. Vlad Dracul is assassinated. The killers are rival nobles. Boyars who believe he has grown too close to the Ottomans. They drag him from his palace. They bury him alive. And they murder Vlad's older brother, Mircea, in an even more grotesque manner. Mircea is captured. His eyes are burned out with red-hot iron stakes. Then he is buried alive next to his father. When the news reaches the young Vlad, still held captive in Ottoman territory, he learns a second brutal lesson. Mercy is weakness. Hesitation is death. And if you want to survive, you must become more terrifying than your enemies. The Ottomans thought they were breaking him. They were training him. To understand Vlad, you must understand Wallachia. Look at a map of Europe in the 15th century. Wallachia is a small principality nestled between the Carpathian Mountains to the north and the Danube River to the south. It sits at the crossroads of empire. To the south and east, the Ottoman Empire, the most powerful military force in the world. They have just conquered Constantinople in 1453, ending 1,000 years of Byzantine rule. They are expanding into Europe, and Wallachia is in their path. To the north, the Kingdom of Hungary, a Christian power desperate to stop the Ottoman advance. They claim authority over Wallachia and demand loyalty. And scattered throughout Wallachia itself, the boyars, wealthy noble families who control land, wealth, and private armies. They see the prince not as a ruler, but as a temporary figurehead they can manipulate or replace. Wallachia is not a nation. It is a battlefield where empires and nobles fight for control. And whoever rules Wallachia must make an impossible choice every single day: submit to the Ottomans and become a vassal state, or resist and face annihilation. Most rulers try to play both sides. They pay tribute to the Ottomans. They make promises to the Hungarians. They survive by being useful and unthreatening. But this strategy has a cost. Wallachia becomes weak, unstable. The throne changes hands constantly. Princes are assassinated, dethroned, replaced. Some rule for years, others for months. One ruler lasts less than 2 weeks before he is murdered. The boyars orchestrate much of this chaos. They prefer weak princes they can control. They profit from instability. They sell their loyalty to the highest bidder. And the common people, the peasants, the merchants, the villagers, suffer. Without a strong ruler, there is no law. Bandits roam freely. Thieves are rarely punished. The roads are dangerous. Commerce collapses. Into this chaos steps Vlad Dracula. He is released from Ottoman captivity in 1448, after years of psychological conditioning. The Sultan gives him an army and installs him as ruler of Wallachia. Vlad is 17 years old. His first reign lasts 2 months. The boyars and the Hungarians unite against him. They drive him out. He flees. He spends the next several years in exile, watching as Wallachia descends further into chaos. But he is learning, studying, preparing. He spends time in Transylvania, in Hungary, building alliances. He learns the language of European diplomacy. He studies military tactics. He watches how other rulers govern. And he comes to a conclusion that will define the rest of his life. Wallachia cannot be governed with kindness. It cannot be ruled through compromise. It must be controlled through absolute, unquestionable terror. In 1456, an opportunity emerges. The current ruler of Wallachia is assassinated. The throne is vacant. The boyars begin their usual scheming, positioning their preferred candidates. But Vlad moves faster. He has support from Hungary. He has money. He has a small but loyal force. And he has something else, a willingness to do things other men would hesitate to do. He marches into Wallachia. He seizes the capital, Targovista. He declares himself prince. And this time, he makes it clear, anyone who opposes him will not be imprisoned. They will not be exiled. They will be impaled. The boyars laugh. They have heard such threats before. Every new prince talks tough. Then the bribes begin, the compromises, the alliances. That is how the game is played. But Vlad doesn't play games. He plays for keeps. Easter Sunday, 1459. The boyars of Wallachia gather in Targovisti for a great feast. It is a tradition. The prince invites the noble families to celebrate, to demonstrate unity, to reinforce alliances. Vlad Dracula hosts the feast. He smiles, he serves wine, he makes toasts. And then, in the middle of the celebration, he gives a signal. His soldiers surround the hall. The doors are locked. Vlad stands. He looks at the boyars, the men who killed his father, who murdered his brother, who have betrayed and manipulated every prince who came before him. And he asks the question, how many princes have you served? Some of the boyars have served 7, some have served 10. A few have served more than 15 different rulers in their lifetimes. Vlad nods slowly. Then he speaks. I have invited you here to answer for your crimes. The older boyars, the ones with gray hair, the ones who orchestrated the murders of princes, are arrested on the spot. They are taken outside the city walls, and they are impaled. Not quickly. Vlad's executioners are skilled. The stake is inserted carefully, avoiding major organs. The victim is hoisted upright. Death comes slowly, over hours, sometimes days. But Vlad is not finished. The younger boyars, the ones too young to have directly participated in past betrayals, are spared execution. Instead, they are given a gift. They are marched 50 miles north to the ruins of a fortress called Poenari, high in the Carpathian Mountains, and they are told to rebuild it, by hand, with no tools but what they can find. They work in their fine Easter clothes. They work until the clothes fall apart. They work until their hands bleed. Many collapse from exhaustion. Many die. But the fortress is rebuilt. And Wallachia learns a lesson. The old rules no longer apply. Over the next several years, Vlad continues his campaign of terror. But it is not random. It is methodical. He targets crime. In a land where theft and banditry have become normalized, Vlad makes punishment so extreme that crime nearly vanishes overnight. Thieves are impaled. Liars are impaled. Corrupt officials are impaled. There are stories, possibly exaggerated, possibly true, that Vlad places a golden cup in the central square of Targovist. Anyone can drink from it, but no one is allowed to take it. The cup remains untouched for years. Merchants begin to travel Wallachian roads without fear. Trade increases. People leave their doors unlocked. The economy stabilizes. But the cost is unimaginable. Foreign merchants who cheat on their taxes, impaled. Beggars who refuse to work, impaled. Adulterers, impaled. Nobles who speak against the prince, impaled. Vlad does not hide his brutality. He makes it public. He stages executions in town squares. He leaves bodies displayed for days, sometimes weeks, as warnings. And here is where history becomes complicated. Because from one perspective, Vlad is a monster, a sadist who takes pleasure in suffering. But from another perspective, he is doing something no other Wallachian ruler has been able to do. He is creating order. For the first time in decades, there is stability. There is law. People can plan for the future. And the question that has haunted historians for centuries is this: was Vlad insane, or was he simply willing to do what was necessary? One account describes Vlad dining among the impaled. He sets up a table in the middle of a forest of stakes, surrounded by dying men, and eats his meal calmly while they scream. Is this sadism, or is it psychological warfare? Is he sending a message? I am not afraid of death. I am not disturbed by suffering. And if you oppose me, I will not look away. We will never know what was in his mind, but we know what happened next. Because Vlad's brutality is not just aimed at his own people. He has a much larger enemy, the Ottoman Empire. The year is 1459. Vlad Dracula has ruled Wallachia for 3 years. He has crushed internal opposition, he has stabilized the economy, he has rebuilt fortresses, and now he stops paying tribute to the Ottoman Sultan. For decades, Wallachia has survived by paying the Ottomans an annual tribute: gold, goods, and a yearly levy of young boys to be trained as janissaries, the elite slave soldiers of the Ottoman army. Vlad refuses. More than that, he begins raiding Ottoman territories south of the Danube. His forces attack villages, burn fortifications, kill Ottoman officials. This is not just defiance. This is a declaration of war. Sultan Mehmed II, the same man who conquered Constantinople, who commands the most powerful army in the world, sends envoys to Wallachia. They arrive with a message: pay the tribute, submit, or be destroyed. Vlad invites the envoys into his palace. He listens to their demands, and then he gives an order. The envoys are wearing turbans, as is Ottoman custom. Vlad asks them to remove their turbans as a sign of respect. The envoys refuse. In their culture, the turban is not removed in the presence of others. Vlad nods slowly, then he speaks. If you will not remove them out of respect, I will ensure they stay on forever. His soldiers seize the envoys. Nails are driven through their turbans into their skulls. They are impaled. When the Sultan hears what has happened, he is furious. But he is also busy with campaigns elsewhere. He sends an army, a smaller force, to punish Vlad and remind him of Ottoman power. The army crosses the Danube. It marches north into Wallachia. It never returns. Vlad's forces ambush them. They use guerrilla tactics, striking at night, disappearing into forests, attacking supply lines. The Ottoman soldiers find villages already burned, wells poisoned, no food, no water, no shelter. And then one by one, the Ottomans begin to disappear. They are not just killed, they are captured, tortured for information, and impaled. Their bodies are left along the roads as warnings. The survivors retreat in terror, but Vlad is not satisfied. In the winter of 1462, he does something unprecedented. He crosses the Danube with his army and invades Ottoman territory. For weeks, his forces rampage through Bulgaria and Serbia, both Ottoman provinces. They burn villages, they destroy fortifications, they kill tens of thousands. But most importantly, they send a message. Vlad writes a letter to the King of Hungary, listing his victories. He claims to have killed over 23,000 Ottomans. And to prove it, he includes a grotesque detail. He has ordered his men to cut off the noses of the dead and send them to him in sacks. The letter is not asking for help, it is bragging. When Sultan Mehmed II hears about the raids, he makes a decision. He will personally lead an army into Wallachia. He will crush Vlad Dracula. He will make an example of him that will echo through history. In the spring of 1462, the Sultan assembles an army. Estimates vary, but most historians believe it numbers between 60,000 and 100,000 men. It is one of the largest military forces ever assembled in the region. Vlad's army numbers perhaps 30,000 at most. Many are peasants with makeshift weapons. The odds are impossible. But Vlad does not plan to fight a conventional battle. As the Ottoman army marches into Wallachia, they find nothing. The villages are empty, the fields are burned, the wells are poisoned. Every source of food and water has been destroyed. Vlad is using scorched earth tactics. He is turning his own country into a wasteland to deny the Ottomans resources. And at night, he attacks. The night of June 17, 1462, becomes legendary. Vlad leads a raid directly into the Ottoman camp. His goal is not to defeat the army. That would be impossible. His goal is to assassinate the Sultan. Thousands of Wallachian soldiers storm through the camp in the darkness. They kill sentries, they set fire to tents, they create chaos. Ottoman soldiers wake to find their comrades being slaughtered. They panic. In the confusion, they begin fighting each other, unsure who is friend or enemy. Vlad's forces nearly reach the Sultan's tent, but Mehmed is protected by his elite janissaries. Ironically, many of them boys taken as tribute from Christian lands, trained and converted. The assassination attempt fails. Vlad's forces retreat into the night. But the psychological damage is done. The Ottoman army is shaken. They have never encountered an enemy like this. Vlad does not fight with honor. He does not follow the rules of war. He uses terror as a weapon. And then comes the forest. As the Ottoman army advances toward the Wallachian capital, they enter a region near the city of Targovista. And they stop. The sight before them is beyond comprehension. For nearly 2 miles, the road is lined with stakes. And on each stake, a body. Ottoman soldiers, Ottoman officials, Bulgarian villagers, men, women, some say even children. Though this detail is disputed. 20,000 corpses, some dead for weeks, rotting in the sun, some still alive, writhing in agony. The smell is unbearable. The sight is worse. This is not a battlefield. This is a deliberate display of terror, a message written in flesh. Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, a man who has seen the worst of war, rides through the forest in silence. His soldiers are vomiting, some are weeping. Even the hardened janissaries are pale. And the Sultan makes a decision. He turns back. His official reason is that his supply lines are overextended, that the scorched earth tactics have made it impossible to sustain the army. That disease is spreading through the camp. All of this is true. But witnesses record his words. I cannot take the land of a man who does such things. The Ottoman Empire, the most powerful force in the world, retreats from Wallachia. Vlad Dracula has won. But the victory comes with a cost. The story should have ended there. Vlad the Impaler defends his homeland against impossible odds. The Ottomans retreat. Wallachia is saved. But history is never that simple. Because while Vlad has defeated the Ottomans, he has also created enemies everywhere else. The Hungarians are horrified by his methods. The Saxon merchants he has impaled, believing them to be traitors and spies, have powerful allies. Stories of his brutality spread through Europe. And his own brother Radu has become an Ottoman general. Remember, Radu and Vlad were both held hostage as children. But while Vlad resisted, Radu adapted. Radu converted to Islam. Radu became a favorite of the Sultan. And now Radu is leading an Ottoman force back into Wallachia. Not to conquer it, but to replace Vlad with someone more manageable. Vlad's support collapses. The boyars, always opportunistic, begin to switch sides. His allies in Hungary betray him. Even his own army begins to desert. In 1462, just months after his greatest victory, Vlad is forced to flee. He escapes to Hungary, seeking support from King Matthias Corvinus. But instead of help, he finds betrayal. Matthias arrests him. The reasons are complex. Some historians believe Matthias was under pressure from the Pope and other European powers who saw Vlad as too unstable. Others believe Matthias wanted to keep the gold meant for financing a crusade against the Ottomans. But the official reason given is that Vlad has committed atrocities, that he is dangerous, that he cannot be trusted. Vlad Dracula is in prison. He spends the next 12 years in captivity, not in a dungeon, but in a form of house arrest. He is held in Hungary in relative comfort, but without freedom. And during those years, something else begins to happen. Stories about Vlad spread through Europe, but they are not accurate histories. They are propaganda. Sensationalized pamphlets printed in German cities, some of the first examples of mass media used to shape public opinion. The pamphlets are published by Saxon merchants, the same people Vlad impaled for what he saw as treason. They have every reason to make him look like a monster. The stories are horrifying. They claim Vlad roasted children and fed them to their mothers, that he skinned people alive, that he cut off women's breasts, that he nailed hats to people's heads, that he drank blood while dining among the impaled. Some of these stories may have a kernel of truth. Vlad did use brutal methods. He did stage public executions. He did use psychological warfare. But the pamphlets exaggerate. They invent. They transform Vlad from a ruthless ruler into a supernatural monster. And the German public is fascinated. These pamphlets become bestsellers. They are reprinted again and again. Woodcut illustrations show Vlad feasting among corpses, torturing innocents, committing acts of sadistic violence. This is how myths are born. Not from a single lie, but from 1,000 small distortions. Vlad becomes a cautionary tale, a symbol of evil, a villain parents use to frighten children. And centuries later, when an Irish author named Bram Stoker is researching Eastern European folklore for a horror novel, he comes across the name Dracula. Stoker knows nothing about the real Vlad. He does not know about the Ottoman wars, the Boyar betrayals, the scorched earth tactics. He only knows the legend, a Romanian prince, a cruel tyrant, a name that means devil. And in 1897, he publishes a novel that will define vampire mythology forever, Dracula. But the Dracula of fiction has almost nothing to do with the historical Vlad. Stoker's vampire is immortal, aristocratic, seductive. He drinks blood. He turns into a bat. He fears crucifixes and sunlight. None of this has anything to do with the real man. Vlad Dracula never drank blood. He was not immortal. He did not have supernatural powers. He was simply a human being who learned that fear is the most powerful weapon in existence. But the damage is done. For most of the world, the name Dracula means vampire. The historical prince is forgotten, buried under centuries of fiction. And yet the story is not over. Because in 1474, Vlad is released from imprisonment. 12 years in captivity changes a man. When Vlad is finally released in 1474, he is no longer the terrifying prince who made Sultan's retreat. He is older, possibly wiser, certainly more cautious. But Wallachia is in chaos again. His brother Radu has died. A series of weak rulers have failed to maintain stability. The Ottomans are tightening their grip. The Boyars are divided. And the King of Hungary makes a calculation. Perhaps Vlad, for all his brutality, is the only man capable of stabilizing the region. Vlad is restored to the throne. But this time he is not the same ruler. He has political constraints. He has Hungarian overseers. He has lost much of his support base. He tries to govern. He tries to rebuild. He tries to restore order. But the Boyars have not forgotten. The Ottomans have not forgiven. And his own people are divided between those who see him as a defender and those who see him as a tyrant. In late 1476, just months into his third reign, Vlad Dracula dies. The exact circumstances are unclear. History offers multiple versions, and we may never know the truth. One account says he was killed in battle against the Ottomans, fighting to the end. Another says he was assassinated by boyars, finally taking their revenge. A third suggests he was betrayed by his own men, killed by soldiers who no longer trusted him. Some sources claim his body was sent to Constantinople, where the Sultan had his head displayed on a stake. A final irony. Other sources say he was buried in a monastery near Bucharest. When archaeologists excavated the site in the 20th century, they found no body. The truth is lost to time. What we know is this: Vlad Dracula ruled for approximately 6 years across 3 separate reigns. He died in his mid-40s, and for centuries afterwards, he was remembered only as a villain. In Western Europe, he became a symbol of Eastern barbarism, a cautionary tale about the dangers of absolute power. In Romania, the memory was more complicated. Some saw him as a tyrant. Others saw him as a defender who did what was necessary. But for most of history, he was forgotten, overshadowed by the fictional vampire who stole his name. It was not until the 20th century that historians began to seriously re-examine his life. And what they found was not a simple story of good or evil. They found a man shaped by trauma, a ruler facing impossible choices, a leader who used terror as a tool because every other option had failed. They found someone who was both monster and defender, villain and hero, sadist and strategist. They found a human being. So what do we make of Vlad the Impaler? In Romania today, he is often celebrated as a national hero. Statues honor him. Tourist sites commercialize him. He is remembered as the prince who stood against the Ottoman Empire when no one else would. From this perspective, Vlad did what every other ruler had failed to do. He defended his homeland. He created stability in a chaotic land. He refused to submit to an empire that had conquered most of Eastern Europe. Yes, his methods were brutal, but so was the age. Medieval warfare was horrific everywhere. Impalement was not unique to Vlad. The Ottomans used it, the Byzantines used it. Rulers across Europe used various forms of torture and public execution as political tools. In this reading, Vlad was simply more effective at it, more willing to go further than his enemies expected. And the results speak for themselves. The Ottomans retreated, crime disappeared, trade flourished. For a brief moment, Wallachia was stable. But there is another perspective. Because even by medieval standards, Vlad's brutality was extreme. The scale of his executions, tens of thousands of people, went beyond military necessity. The deliberate displays of suffering, the forest of stakes, the dining among the impaled, suggests something darker. Psychological warfare, yes, but also something more personal. A man who had internalized trauma to such a degree that he could no longer see his enemies as human. Vlad was held hostage as a child. He witnessed his father buried alive. He saw his brother tortured and killed. He spent years learning that mercy is weakness and fear is power. Is it any surprise that he became who he became? Modern psychology might diagnose him with post-traumatic stress disorder, with antisocial personality traits, with a worldview so warped by violence that violence became his only language. But we cannot psychoanalyze the dead. We can only look at what they did. And what Vlad did was create a reign of terror so extreme that it is still remembered 600 years later. The question we are left with is not whether Vlad was good or evil. History is too complicated for such simple judgments. The question is, when survival is at stake, how much cruelty becomes acceptable? When you are surrounded by enemies, when betrayal is constant, when weakness means death. Do the rules change? Vlad believed they did. He believed that fear was not just a tool, but the only tool that worked. And for a brief moment, he was proven right. But the cost was his soul, his reputation, his place in history. He won the battle and lost the war for his own humanity. Vlad the Impaler was not a vampire. He did not live forever. He did not drink blood. He cast a reflection, felt the sun on his face, and died like any other man. But in some ways, he did become immortal. Not because of what he actually did, but because of what he represents. He represents the question every society must answer. What are we willing to do to survive? When a leader says, we face an existential threat and normal rules no longer apply, do we believe them? Do we follow them? Vlad said the same thing. He argued that Wallachia was surrounded by enemies, that half measures would lead to destruction, that only absolute terror could create stability. And he was not entirely wrong. But he was also not entirely right. Because the stability he created was temporary. It lasted only as long as he could maintain the fear. The moment he was gone, the chaos returned. Terror is not a foundation, it is a flood. It can clear the ground, but nothing grows in its wake. And yet Vlad's story endures because we recognize something in it. We see rulers today who invoke fear, who justify cruelty, who claim that extreme measures are necessary for survival. We see societies that trade freedom for security, mercy for order, humanity for power. And we are forced to confront the same questions Vlad's subjects faced. Is this leader protecting us, or becoming the threat they claim to fight? Where is the line between necessary violence and sadism? And once that line is crossed, can it ever be uncrossed? These are not medieval questions. They are eternal questions. Vlad the Impaler lived 600 years ago, but the darkness he represented, the willingness to inflict suffering in the name of a greater good, has never gone away. We see it in wars, in revolutions, in regimes that promise order but deliver oppression. And each time we are forced to decide, is this justified, or is this simply evil wearing the mask of necessity? Vlad believed he was a defender. His enemies believed he was a monster. History records both truths and lets us decide. But perhaps the most disturbing truth is this. Vlad was not an anomaly. He was not a supernatural creature. He was not uniquely evil. He was a human being who learned that fear works. And that lesson has been learned again and again, in every century, in every corner of the world. The real horror of Vlad the Impaler is not that he was a monster. It is that he was a man. And men are capable of anything. If this story changed how you see Dracula, hit that like button. If you think Vlad was a monster, comment monster. If you think he was a defender, comment defender. Let's see where history stands. And subscribe to Real History Documentary, because the most disturbing stories in history are not the legends. They are the true ones. We strip away myth and fiction to confront what actually happened. No vampires, no supernatural horror, just human beings making choices that echo through centuries. Hit that notification bell. More stories like this are coming. And remember, history is not a fairy tale. It is a warning. Thank you for watching. Until next time.